We're going to be discussing the theme of how to link national and subnational levels in our dialogue phases and align priorities at national and subnational levels. Before we start, or as we start, I'm going to ask all of you to think about an experience about a challenging situation that you might have had in terms of representation or participation or coordination with stakeholders at a subnational level. I want all of you to think about that, and in a while I'm going to ask you to write a sentence or two in the chat box about your experience. I'm also going to do a round of introduction, but first I'm going to kind of just give a few pieces of information, introductory information. First, about me, I'm Leif Petersen. I'm a senior commodities advisor in the Green Commodities program. I have been with GCP for more than 5 years, and so kind of participated in the development of the national commodity platform concept. This workshop is a part of a series that we do with the Green Commodities community. And as you see here, this is a program. I do have it in Spanish here, but essentially a series of different themes and also like knowledge streams that we're going to provide to the members of the Green Commodities community. And this is going to be, or these are interactive workshops. We cannot call them webinars. So the idea is that we want to make it very interactive as much as possible, as had it been a workshop with your physical presence. So this is not going to be a workshop or an event where I'm going to be talking and you're going to be taking notes. Rather, we're going to be discussing between ourselves different aspects of these themes and how we can find activities and solutions to these challenges. Yeah. So before I do the round of introduction, I'm just going to reflect a little bit about how this is important for us. And I was asked to make this to do this e-workshop, and as I gave it some thoughts of what's really in it in terms of the relationship between the national level and subnational level, I kind of came up with what I think are 3 key aspects of this that are challenging for us to manage. And I divided it up in these 3 different aspects: the representation, the participation, and coordination. So representation, we're talking about, different voices that are present in our country at different levels. Some voices are harder to hear than others. And okay, I see I get a message from Jordan. Maybe you can send a forward, Matthias, of the link. So some voices are harder to hear and often tend to get neglected at the national level when we have events or workshops or plenaries at the national level. And we do need to make sure that all the interests are represented, also the very marginal or local voices. The second aspect I felt is the participation. How do we get all the different stakeholders, also at local levels, to participate in our processes if they are often focused at the national capitals? People may be poorly organized, and we need to facilitate their participation. And finally, there's the issue of coordination between the dialogue that goes on at the national level, and then also the local concerns and priorities. We have local governments and local planning processes and local priorities, and how do we coordinate them all and align these priorities with national dialogue. So this is my way of kind of framing this problem. If you have other suggestions, I'd like to hear them. But otherwise, we're going to work with, in this workshop, these dividing the theme into these three sub issues. So I'm going to stop sharing screen now and ask you to introduce yourselves. I do want, before that, to give you a minute or so to think about this. What is your experience with the challenging situation in terms of representation or participation or coordination with subnational stakeholders? So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and meanwhile you can write in the chat box about your experience. Yeah. The way we're going to do the round of introduction is I'm going to pick someone, and that person is going to tell us who you are and where you work and what you do. And then you're going to pass the word to somebody else on the workshop list. Yeah. So I'm going to start up with Afro. Are you there, Afro? So please introduce yourself, where you work and what you do, so people can get to know you, and everybody can just also start to write about their experience with national and subnational in the chat box, please.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Afro Mansur. I'm from UNDP Indonesia. I have really to implement the net in Riau and in Palawan. This is my job. Thank you.
Perfect.
I want to Purini the script. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Afro. Hi, everyone. My name is Rini, and I'm the National Platform Manager for palm oil platform in Indonesia called FOXP. So my responsibility is to manage day-to-day or to help our government counterparts in managing the national and also provincial and district level platform. And I think I'm going to pass this to Colleen.
Thank you, Ibarini. My name is Colleen McNally Murphy. I am part of the Green Commodities Program team. I am the Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Specialist for the team. I work a lot with the Good Growth Partnership projects and also with the rest of the GCP portfolio as well. I will pass to Rico.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. Hello, everyone. My name is Rico Pratama Putra. You can call me Rico. I'm part from WWF Indonesia. My position is National Technical Sustainable Palm Oil Program. Actually, implementing partner with CI and UNDP Indonesia. Of course, implementing in West Kalimantan, Indonesia. Okay, I think it's enough. I pass to Ibu Pascal. Pascal.
Thank you, Mas Rico. All right, so my name is Pascal Bonzong and I work in Panama. I'm part of the UNDP team there, and my responsibility is with the Good Growth Partnership implementation, both on the production side and on the adaptive management and learning side. And so we have 3 countries as part of the production project: Indonesia, Liberia, and Paraguay implementing platforms. In some cases just at the regional level, in other cases both at the subnational and national level.
Thanks. I'm gonna pass to Kathleen.
Hello, thank you. My name is Kathleen Wood, and I was just recently hired by GCP to assess the methodology that many of you are using at the national and subnational level. So I will spend the next 2 months in conversation with many of you and others, and we'll produce a report with recommendations essentially for the methodology for the next version of it, 2.0, if you will. So really happy to be here and learn from all of you, and thanks ahead of time for those that I will have spoken with and will speak with. And I will pass it to Jordan.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm Jordan from PNZ, currently working with the UNDP on the palm oil platform, establishing palm oil platform. We're at the early stage of developing the platform, and having political buy-ins and national buy-in stuff. Not much on going to implementation and to the subnational level. But yeah, at the beginning stage, early stage of the establishment of the platform here in PNG. Thank you. Yep, I'll pass it to Alain. Alain or Aline or Sylvia.
Yes, thank you,
Sorry
Jolan.
for that. Sorry.
No worries. I was not sure if it was for me, but yes.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aline. I'm working as a program management and communication support for the Good Growth Partnership, especially on the 2 projects that Pascal just mentioned, so the production and adaptive management and learning projects. And so I'm part of the UNDP team and based in Panama. And I will pass it to Cynthia.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Cynthia. Oh, sorry. Is it Cynthia or Cynthia? Sorry. Carry on, Cynthia.
It's okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia. I'm the Stakeholders Engagement Officer for Indonesian Palm Oil Platform. One of my tasks is also responsible for the provincial platform establishment and the action plan. I pass it to Ibu Tri. Ibu Tri. Hello. Good evening, Jakarta time. We are still working here. My name is Putri, National Project Manager SPOI GGP. In terms of platforms, trying to encourage multi-stakeholders participation in the platforms for the successful in transforming Indonesian palm oil sector. Thank you. Yeah, we pass it to Sinta.
Thank you, Cynthia. My name is Sinta. I'm from ProForest. I'm Indonesian, but I'm based in our office in Oxford. And I'm involved in a production landscape program, which will be based in Africa and Indonesia. I believe my colleague Lang Lang and Intan was already engaged with Ibu Tri or Ibu Rini a few days ago. So it will be very interested to get to know each other and get to know our programs in Indonesia. Thank you. I'll pass it to Matthias.
Can I just jump in here? Sorry, Matthias. Just while we finish up with the round of introduction, please write your experience in the chat box. Yeah. You haven't done so already.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Cinta. My name is Matthias, and I'm the community coordinator. Let me see. I'll pass it to Emilio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emilio. and I am here in the Panama office as well. I'm the event and admin intern for these past few months. So it's been working with a lot of the processes behind the scenes and supporting the team in many of the different projects globally. It's been really a joy and a learning experience. And I will pass it to, I think we're missing Owen.
Hi, everyone. This is Owen from WWF-US. I'm working under the Good Growth Partnership, working with WWF's demand work under that partnership. I serve as a market intelligence researcher. I will pass it to Popo. Is he gone?
Hello, everyone. My name is Popo Dedi Iskandar. I'm working with CI Indonesia in South Tapanuli. I am responsible for establish a platform sub-district of South Tapanuli. So I'm passed to.
Are we done, I think, with the round?
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
Yeah, that's perfect. I just wanted to ask Popo and Owen, if you can, turn on your video. That would be great. If you can't, that's also fine. Okay?
I have problem with internet.
Right, that's fine. We understand. Okay, so I'm going to just open the chat box and see essentially what we got here. So from Colleen, I'm going to do this because it's faster. Tried this at another time, and it just took too long for people to tell it verbally. So now we try to have people write it down, and it's kind of faster to get people's feedback. So from Colleen, working in Mali at the community level, it was hard to work with men and women together. It was hard also to get the attention of national or regional level officials. Yeah, there were no real mechanisms in place to engage the community. Yeah, definitely challenge. And then from Jordan, we have experience in the mining industry, palm oil industry, climate change, environment, and land work. So a lot of different sectors. From Rini, it's not easy to connect the subnational to the national because Indonesia is very wide. So there's a geographical issue there as well. Therefore, we establish platforms up to district level. We're going to hear a little bit more about that later on. Any other comments? I think this is what I have. So going to give you all kind of a minute more to write your experience. I'm sure you have loads of them. No? Not a lot of chats here coming up.
People are being shy. Like,
yeah, I think don't be shy. Don't be shy. We're all friends here. Anyway. Okay. Well, I mean, you can absolutely continue to write. It's basically just get a feeling of your own experiences, and also if you've given thought to this issue, which is often difficult to handle for all of us. So anyway, please keep writing, and I can come back if there are other messages. So meanwhile, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to share my screen again. So essentially, what I'm going to do now is to try to frame the issue a little bit, and then we're going to get to discussion later on. So we talked about why. Oh, I talked about why I think this is important, and the three different aspects of the theme that I kind of chose to divide it up into. And so the first issue about the social representation, and I think, at least according to my experience, often when we try to find the different voices out there, we find that it's often, the representation often not very very good, or there's limited structures we can build on, and that's typically what we're looking for, right? We look for some structures who represent certain groups of people, you know, like cooperatives for producers, or civil society groups, or some organized communities. And sometimes they're there, but sometimes you're really going to have to go and look for them. And sometimes they're not really there. I mean, let's say in some countries, producers aren't really organized at all. So really, you need to ask yourself, whose voice do I need to get represented? You know, which are the voices at all? It might not be so obvious. And then the question then comes, how do I identify them, but also who really represents these voices? So in well-organized, let's say, producer groups, you have some structures, and they somehow, you know, speak for the members. But for many other groups, they're not necessarily so organized. So who really represent their voices? And even if you identify them, how do you generate their voices? And how do you feed them into a dialogue process? So I think this is really, really challenging. I don't think we have a very, very good solution to this problem. And certainly, like particular interests of like women or youth or some communities, and they can also be, you know, ethnic groups, or it can be religious groups or some other groups. They can be language barriers. They can be all sorts of things. So this is at least a serious challenge that we need to deal with. So this is going to be one of the discussion groups later on. I'll come back to that. The next part was the participation in dialogue. So once you have your different voices and stakeholders identified, then you also need to have them participate. And that is also a challenge, you know, when you have your processes that tend to be concentrated in country capitals. And, you know, how do you get groups there who might be poorly organized? You know, they might not be accustomed to speak out. Some of them could be suppressed or ignored or despised by country elites, you know, in the capital, in the government maybe. And as I mentioned before, also with languages and customs. So it can be challenging to have them actually participate actively in our dialogue processes. Then I included a group which is definitely not weak, but also can be a challenge to involve. So I basically put them in here, kind of lump them together. This is the participation of like international commercial supply chain actors who do not have a national presence. And I also find often that they're not well represented in our dialogue processes. So it's another example at another level, admittedly, at an international level, but which is also a challenge for us to represent. And they do both have a voice, but they also play potentially an enormously important role in our work with commodity supply chains. This issue of participation has to do with also the logistical challenges of how you conduct your meetings and events. And it has a lot to do with the methodologies that we use to make sure that all the voices are heard. So we need to be really creative here and keep it in mind so people's voices are heard. All right. And the third is somewhat thematically a little bit different. It has to do with coordination between national and subnational levels and the alignment of interests different levels. So you can imagine that if our dialogue mostly goes on in the capital at the national level with national institutions, et cetera, et cetera. So the question arises, how do we align that with local governments or governance and planning processes? How do we reflect what's important locally, the issues and priorities? And also the other way around, if we are at the national level, how do we make sure that local governments buy into what we propose and adopt the corresponding action into their planning? Ideally, we want to achieve some level of synergy between different stakeholders at different levels in society. And also we need to monitor at different levels the activities that are going on and the impact that we are hopefully seeing. Okay, so I'm going to, I can kind of try to summarize this in a problem statement for this session. So the national commodities platforms get their strength from the diversity of stakeholders. And then how can we make, identify and give voice to local and marginalized voices in our dialogue process, and how can we align the national dialogue with local priorities and planning? So I hope you buy into this formulation. All right, so before we get into the discussion of these three different problem areas, I'm just going to give a few examples of how that has been dealt with or dealt with in different countries. And we're going to call on Cynthia from Indonesia. If you could help us explain how you in Indonesia have been dealing with the national and subnational level. You have national platforms. Now you're also establishing some subnational platforms. And there are some areas where you're not going to have a subnational platform. So can you explain to us a little bit your experience? You will only have a maximum of 5 minutes, but I think it's going to be interesting to hear. So Cynthia. Cynthia, are you there?
Okay. Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
We hear you, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Live. So if I can share from the experience from Indonesia, yeah, actually how we try to connect it, the national and the provincial platform. The tools that we use is the National Action Plan. The National Action Plan is provide guidance and tools to as tools to work together for the best provincial platform. But before we also establish the provincial platform, we try to coordinate with the provincial government, and we involve the provincial government as well since the first time of the establishment of the national platform, so they are aware and know how the methodology, and to strengthen as well, to develop a linking between the national and provincial. We also invite all the actors at the national and provincial into the training platform. In that training platform, we develop together what is the how to connect it between the national and the provincial or even the district level, and the establishment the platform in the term of the implementation, monitoring, and the coordination, and how. Hello. That's
yes.
That's the experience from the Indonesia. So the important things in here is all the key actors at the its level is really understand the importance of the platform and how they establishing and what is the objective of this platform. So if the key actors already know what is the objective of the platform or the action plan, they they will understand and easily to collaborate. That's in the context of Indonesian experience.
So thanks for that. That's great. But I also know that you don't have provincial platforms everywhere. So what do you do in the areas where you don't have a platform? So how do you manage that differently?
Yeah, actually, in the context of Indonesia, even though we do not have the provincial platform everywhere, I mean in the 7th province, but we involve all the NGOs or donor that working on the in that provinces. We also try to improve the awareness from the national government to also not, I mean, they can also put the budget on the others provincial platform. They can also replicate. That's why the strategy, we also involve the NGO, the partners, and the government into the platform training, into our meeting, so they understand the methodology and they can do it with their own budget. So there's some replication into others provincial or even district, and we also make the mechanism that they can report to the government in this in this case is for the Minister of Agriculture or the coordinating Ministry of Economic, so they can send a letter, they can report to them, to the government, that we want to establish the national platform with the stakeholders platform with the methodology of the FOXB, we call it FOXB in here. So can we have the technical assistance? Currently, we also like the GIZ is also asking for the technical assistance and the knowledge sharing on how to establish platform. Even in the GIZ, it's not only about the palm oil, but it's also rubber. So I think the important thing is also the knowledge sharing in here.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. I also have a few quick examples from some countries in Latin America. You might be asking yourselves why the Latinos aren't on this call, but I'm going to have a separate session in Spanish because it kind of tends to help the Latinos to be more free, plus this time issue also. So I'm just going to give you really briefly a few examples from Latin America. For instance, we have a coffee platform in Peru, and there the capital is Lima, of course, and the most of the coffee production is in the Amazon, to the very north. So it's like an hour's flight over the Andes Mountains, and that's kind of difficult to get a good representation in meetings in the capital. So the team there has conducted a series of regional consultations in the production regions. So I think about 5 of the main regions, they've had several meetings, and that required a lot of travel activity, actually, because if you need to set up some kind of regional plenary consultation meeting in 5 different regions, and you need to travel several people from the team, and you need to do that several times over the lifetime of the platform, then that's actually kind of a challenge logistically. But that's what they did. They had the big problem that many of the Peruvian farmers aren't organized. Some of them, like a third or so, are represented in cooperatives, but many of the non-organized farmers, it's really, really difficult to figure out who can really represent those voices, as I mentioned before. So that remains also a challenge in Peru, and I think probably also in many other countries. Then in Paraguay, we're working on soy and on cattle, and Paraguay chose to do it in a different way than we normally are doing it, where we start at the national level and then, like Indonesia, then later on establish maybe subnational platforms if it's possible. So Paraguay chose to start, well, it doesn't sound right to say it bottom up maybe, but I mean, starts out in the regions. So basically, they had 2 regional cattle platforms, and 2 regional soy platforms. And they all produced their own regional action plan. And that was from the logic that the producers, so we need to change their minds and change practices. They are out there, and they wouldn't be able to participate very much in the national process. So that was one way of empowering the local stakeholders. And then now when we have those action plans, then they are setting up the national level platforms. It's not particularly something we recommend over the other way around, but it is one way of doing it, and I think it's interesting. Now, the final example is from Dominican Republic. We've been working in cocoa, and the Dominican Republic is a small country. There are about 40,000 producers, and it takes about a couple of hours to get to the capital from the cocoa producing regions. So it's not really possible to do a sub-national platform and a national platform. So instead, the coordinator worked a lot to make sure that the communities and the producers, the producer groups showed up to the meeting. So she would bus them in basically organized transportation so that they could go to the capital and participate in the meetings. Anyway, that's just a little bit of inspiration. And now I'm going to explain to you how we're going to do it. We are going to organize all of you into the 3 groups and give you time so the technology can actually split you up in subgroups. And you can have 15 minutes each group to discuss each theme. Yeah. So I'm going to just go around just in a minute and ask which group you would like to participate in. I do need some kind of participation in all of the groups, so I'm going to manipulate a little bit if I don't get in good enough participation in all the groups. So the idea is that we'll split you up in groups. Matthias will divide you up in the subgroups. You're going to have 15 minutes together to discuss the theme in depth. And of course, the question that you need to address, how, hold on. Yeah, in the first group, how do we get the proper representation with which voices? How do we find the voices? How do we give articulation to those voices? Who really represents these people? In the participation groups, it's like, how do we get them actually to participate, to practical ways to make sure that all the voices are heard? And in here, you can also include the voice of the international buying community, commodity buying community. And the third, about coordination. So how do we ensure coordination between the national priorities and sub-national priorities and plans, be it at this, state level in a country or a province or in a jurisdiction or locally or what have you. All right, does it make sense to everybody? After the 15 minutes, you'll get back to the plenary, and I'm going to call on each group. You're going to just say what are the conclusions. I would hope that you have at least like 5 different ideas, or ideally more, of how to tackle this, how to recommendations or actions or solutions to this challenge that you can share with us in the plenary. And then after each group is done, I'm going to open it up to the other participants if you have other golden nuggets and ideas, bright ideas. So ideally we would have 5 minutes of presentation only. So be brief, write it down so you don't have to explain it, but just basically read up your recommendation. Yeah. All right, questions at this point? Please go ahead if you have a question. All right. It seems everything is clear. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to basically make the round and ask each of you which group you'd like to participate in. So I'm going to start with Kathleen.
I'm happy to go wherever you need me.
All right. Okay, so I can kind of put you on standby and I'll just put you in a group depending on where we have more or less representation. Aline?
Would be interested in joining the participation group.
The participation group, great. Hold on. Yeah, Rico?
Okay, I interesting in representation group.
Perfect. Owen?
I think Owen left.
Owen left. All right. Okay, so we're going to pass on to Cinta. Cinta, are you there?
Sorry, I was in mute.
Yeah.
Can I go to the participation as well?
Absolutely. And I think Brini left as well, maybe? She had another call, she let me know. Was it, was Cinta with an H? Is it like that or with an H? I can't remember.
With an H.
That's an H, right?
With H.
That was an H, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think Rini left, so we'll go to Colleen.
Either representation or participation. Maybe representation.
Right. Okay, Afro. Are you there, Afro?
I join the coordination box.
Sorry?
In coordination box, I think.
In coordination box, great. Okay, Pascal?
Coordination.
Perfect. Great, and Emilio?
Participation.
Participation. Okay, and Cynthia, you're still there, so which group? Cynthia, you're still with us?
Yes, coordination.
Coordination. Okay, Jordan? Jordan, you there?
Yeah, participation.
Participation.
Right.
Perfect. And Ivo Tree, I think if you're still there, you're with Cynthia or not?
No.
No. So which group are you? Are you still there, Ivo Tree?
No, Ibu Sri is already left for the meeting.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to put Kathleen in the first group of how to get proper representation. Okay. Perfect. So it's 3 or 4 people in each group. I don't think we have anybody else.
Popo Daddy is missing.
That is right. Sorry about that. Bobo, which group? Bobo? Are you on mute or did you leave us?
He's in mute. I can see him here, but he's in mute.
Yeah, maybe he went for coffee. So anyway.
That's okay. We can split the groups up, and then when Popo shows up, I'm gonna put him in a group.
Right. Perfect. All right, so the instructions, I hope they're clear. We're going to split you up in the groups. You're going to discuss the topic. Think about at least 5 or more kind of recommendations. Write them down so you don't have to explain them at length. Then when we get back after 15 minutes, you'll share them with the plenary. And I'm going to kind of jump in and out of the different groups and visit you and see how you're doing. All right? So let's try that. Are you ready, Matthias?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So maybe you should just explain how people need to click on a button, right? That you sent.
Yeah, I'm gonna split you up in groups now. See you in 15 minutes. If you have any questions, there is a chat box. Just let me know and I'm gonna send live to your group. See you in a few minutes. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. 15. Okay, it seems Rico is still with us. Huh, there he went. Okay. So far, so good. And almost on time.
Live. Maybe we can do what we did yesterday. Send me the questions on the chat box and I will share it with everybody.
Okay, that's good. But do you still think, I mean, people should still give the kind of verbal feedback, yeah?
Yeah, we have plenty of time now, so it's good.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so...
just share the questions with me on the chat and I will share it with everybody.
Okay. Okay, so to Matthias. This is the first one, so representation. Participation. And coordination.
All right, great, thank you.
Right. Okay. So Popo, you're still there? You're still not with us, Popo? You hear us? Yeah. So maybe maybe you send it to one of the groups.
Yeah, give me a minute. Which one would you like to go?
The representation group first.
All right. Here you go.
Dengar suaranya.
Hello, Popo.
Hello, hello. I'm sorry, I'm lost connection.
All right, no problem. Which group would you like to go to? The coordination group?
I think I go with coordination group.
Okay, good. I'm gonna send you to the group. Okay.
Okay.
And the question is how to ensure coordination between national priorities and subnational priorities. Okay. Hello. Live, you're in mute.
Ah. Okay, so I'm going to, if you can throw me in with the participation group.
Okay. Participation.
Okay, everybody, so welcome back.
Welcome back.
How did that go? Was it difficult? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also sometimes difficult in a physical workshop, right? To interact and come up with something meaningful in 15 minutes. Well, we do appreciate it, and I'm gonna want to go the round, group for group, to hear what you came up with. Hopefully, you have some recommendations, and kind of brief recommendations instead of kind of long reflections. But let's see where you got to. So we're going to start with the representation group. Please share your conclusions in 5 minutes. Yeah. Who wants to start?
Kathleen or Rico, do you want to jump in?
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll start, and then you two, please jump in. Well, I think the biggest recommendation is to have an idea of who you want to include at the beginning. So, government, NGOs, private sector, smallholders, other community groups. And then I think going to the field to make sure that you are engaging with the communities is important, because then other people who you maybe didn't have on that list, you may meet people and realize that they should be involved in the dialogue as well. And then Rico had a good point about the free, prior, informed consent being really important. And we didn't really get a chance to, well, we did talk about it. I just had a thought afterwards, so I won't speak for the group on this one entirely. But I think that that's important also because it can encourage people to come forward. Not only is it good practice, but having these sort of support structures in place can increase participation as well, potentially. But Rico and Kathleen, please add to what I just said.
Yeah, Liv, thank you, Cullen. Actually, yeah, in the experience in Indonesia condition, especially in palm oil sector, actually there's a lot of problem when we decide to the representation in group or in community or in platform. But my idea, yeah, like Cullen said about FPIC, when we before decide to the representation from the community or the people, my example in the palm oil sector, we must see the representation in can give an impact, big impact, or significant impact in the landscape in the palm oil plantation. So we can minimize the conflict, especially in conflict resolution about land occupation or etc. When the FPIC had the implementing. Cullen, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Kathleen, do you have anything?
Well, I would just add the comment that you brought in, an example from Costa Rica that I thought was good about my interpretation of what you said was, if you look at the impact, maybe some of the negative impacts and how that relates to organizations or groups that you wouldn't normally think about including, like how you think more out of the box, so to speak, in who gets involved is important, and that may come from looking at impacts or negative impacts of the current issue and people that might care about that in a way that helps you think more laterally.
Right, that was the example from Costa Rica, where the Pineapple platform didn't really have organized groups to work with, but they managed to find some other kind of social organization. In this case, some community water management groups that were organized that they could actually use to get some kind of representation. That was the example I gave. All right, that's good. So any of the other participants have suggestions, ideas on how to improve our work on representation?
May I ask, Liv?
Yes, please, Popo.
Do you guys have experience to do the socialization at each meeting? I mean, you always tell about what definition of the palm oil, sustainable palm oil, and what definition of platform, something like that, to repeat again and repeat per each meeting, I mean.
I'm not sure how to answer that. Maybe Cynthia, do you have an answer for that?
Hello. Yeah, I think based on our experience, we just want to share that. Yeah, if you want to, I mean, it depends on the target. If we want to have socialized, like what is the sustainability in palm oil sectors, targeted the private sectors, for instance, the companies, then we need the research person from the company's representative, like they are the pioneer. So each of the target group is need to convince by their own language, their own person. So what we do is, if you want to socialize something, especially on the topic of the sustainability, so we usually facilitate the research person or the speakers is meet with or fit with the profile of the target groups. So if the smallholders, we bring the smallholders that have already advanced on the sustainability or they already got the certification, like RSPO or the ISPO thing, something like that. Yes, we do the facilitation for the socialization, but we also think about who will be the target of the socialization. So it more speak and fit to their language and understanding. That's the experience from Indonesia.
Right. So I just wonder if anybody else has inputs to this group. I do think that this is a topic that's genuinely challenging for us to, and it may be the reason why we don't have like a top 5 super structured suggestions, is that this is really challenging to manage, and there maybe are not very good solutions. So how do you make sure that the very most marginalized people who are often not organized and not vocal about their concerns, how do we give them a voice? And I actually think we don't really have that right. But at least part of the solution is to be aware about it, aware of it, and continue to look for that kind of inclusion and to improve even gradually. If we can't get it perfect, at least we can do what we can to make sure that we give voices, and that it's not just the strongest voices or the strongest interests who get to define all of our dialogue and the priorities that we set in the national commodities platforms. So with that, I'm going to jump to the next group to try to finish more or less on time. So let's jump to the participation group and see what you came up with. Who wants to go first?
I took some notes so I can maybe share what I wrote and And Shinta, Emilio, and Jordan, please free to add if I maybe missed something.
Sure.
But one of the points that we discussed was first, I guess, related to the representation issue. As we were saying that the first thing to ensure participation is to really understand the problem that we want to discuss and identify all the right actors that should be invited. Then we also talked about all the kind of organization of a consultation, of a meeting, and all the logistics that is important to take into account to ensure participation. So it means timing of a meeting. It means making sure that the meeting is accessible to all of the actors, even the one located in remote areas, for example. We also talked about the important role of facilitation. Having a facilitator who ensure that everyone has a chance to participate, and beyond inviting people, enabling participation is also a different issue. So that can be in part maybe solved by ensuring that everyone understands well the problem, and giving also the chance to all the participants to hear to each other and to understand the point of view of the others. What? Yeah, and after I also have a point about linking participation to coordination, which is the next group. But I might have missed some other things during our conversation, so please feel free to add.
Yeah, I think I will add a little bit, like Aline said, after you actually identify all the key actors. When we're talking about marginal, sometimes, we're talking about small independent farmers groups. But some experience also said that important significant key actors, which is such a supply chain company, which is supposed to be engaged in some of this platform, hasn't been engaged yet. Why? Then the next step that we discussed earlier is probably to find a common goal. If you get a common goals, I think people will not really easily participate, but actually engage with the platform. And then to scale it up is actually to see whether someone has to create a new platform, because as we know in Indonesia, there's a lot of already existing platform that some of these key actors can actually engage with. But then again, as Aline and Jordan and Emilio said, there's a gap there between all these actors who would like to engage and this platform was already existed, but either the information of access information, it's not been shared to wider. So there's a gap that I guess some coordination of facilitating is also important. And then when it's already engaged in a platform, it's also important to have a communication protocol. We also discussed earlier how this participation within the platform can be shared to all actors engaged. So that communication protocol, we think, is also important to be part of a good participation. Yeah, I think that's all the additional points I have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, to add into that, I think to really make participations more meaningful and more effective, relevant organizations or stakeholders need to own, right? Relevant organizations or stakeholders need to own whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
The ownership of that, because the only taking ownership of that will give that interest to participate, right?
Yeah.
They need to see where they can come in to help. What is their role in doing that? What is their role in doing that? Department of Agriculture, what is their role? Department of Forestry, what is your role in that? To make things right, to make things good, more sustainable. So if only we identify the roles in between these sectors, then they begin to take ownership, they begin to take responsibility towards whatever it is. And I think, yeah, taking ownership is the, yeah.
Okay, those are all great points. Wanted to ask if anybody else from the other group have some suggestions to improve our participation of the different stakeholders and voices. While you think, I have a few myself. First of all, there's like when we get people to participate and they might participate, but it can be difficult to have them speak up in a powerful way. But there are facilitation techniques that we use to do that, and there's actually another stream here led by our platform guru Lisa Melvin. There's also webinars that have been recorded that you can go and look at, where she talks about some of these methods that we can use to make sure that everybody is heard and not only the people with the microphone. And one of the methods is to divide people up in groups like we've done it now. So it's not just the moderator talking all the time, or the most articulate or strong voices, but if you split people up and have them talk for 2 or 3 people together, and then you join with other groups, so you maybe have a round table of 8 people discussing together, and then each table report back to the plenary. Then you allow each of the voices to be heard at the table. So then there are like a number of different ways you can do that to make sure that you don't have the dominance of the very strong people with the microphone. Then there are other things as well. And when we start our processes, typically when we get stakeholders together, people start to negotiate, and they go negotiate their own interests, and they often come there with a preset agenda. And what we really need to try to establish is a certain sense of empathy, that recognition that all the voices are legitimate, even though they're not maybe your own interests, but you need to recognize that the other people also have legitimate interests. And that's like a prerequisite of dialogue. And so that's really important, I think, also when we talk about participation, to create this environment where people are invited to speak, and then they're taken seriously by the other stakeholders. So anyway, I kind of wanted to hear if somebody else have any suggestions in this area. Final thoughts. All right, let's go on then to the last group of coordination. I didn't manage to visit you in your chat room, but please go ahead and share your conclusions and recommendations.
Colleagues, if you want, I can start and then you can add whatever I'm missing. Is that okay? Colleagues that were with me in the group? Because we didn't talk about who would be reporting back. We didn't have time. We were cut in the middle of a discussion. Is that all right?
I think you should go ahead. Yeah, perfect.
All right. So we had very exciting discussions, I must say, hearing mostly from the experience of our Indonesian colleagues at the provincial and district level and national level. So my takeaway from listening to them really and asking questions, the main question that we focused on towards the end was, how do we align and coordinate between national priorities and local subnational level priorities? So we said that the National Action Plan is and should be a common guide and framework for the provincial and district levels. So that's a key thing. That nonetheless, specific priorities and interests exist at the provincial and district levels, and we need to recognize that. And that one of the key things also that was noted by the colleagues is that at the provincial and district level, usually they are not used to do planning. So the mere fact of asking them to plan then helps them prioritize, and then they can look up at the NAP, for a guidance, for a guide and a framework. So one of the key things that I heard from the colleague is really the NAP, the need to consider all the provincial and national interests also at the district level. So that's top down for the district level. And finally, one of the things that Cynthia recognized also is that in order to ensure coordination and alignment, it is important that the national level writes to the subnational level, kind of another top-down thing where, if Ibu Mustalifa writes to the provincial and district level, then we get them noticing and taking a look at the priorities of the national level too. So that's my takeaways from the discussion. Over to you, Cynthia, Mas Afro, Mas Popo.
For me, it's already clear. Thank you, Pascal, for sharing.
Okay, is somebody speaking? I can't really hear.
I think from our group is already clear, Liv.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing it, Ibu Pascal.
You're welcome.
A great summary. So is there any other comment from the other participants on the coordination issue and alignment of priorities at national and subnational levels?
I would like to, if I may, on coordination based on everyone's experience. Is it also always easier if the government lead the platform, or is it any other experience that, I don't know, donors or NGOs successful leading a platform based on the, national and subnational platform?
Is there anybody who wants to
It's
answer
a question.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's me, Jordan. Yeah, I think it's very important for the government to take ownership of that for transparency's sake and neutrality. Because, in times you will definitely face rough times from the civil society, from the company, as well as from the government. But I think the most important organizations to take lead, like for example, here in Papua New Guinea, it is facilitated by the platform is facilitated by UNDP, but we are trying our best. We went as far as doing political buy-in to have the platform sit under Department of Agriculture and Livestock, which is the most appropriate department to run it.
So, Shinta, maybe I can add to that. So there is, of course, what Jordan says, the really super important for us that the government step up and show leadership. But we do in the beginning of the dialogue processes play a strong role as a facilitator and creation of this neutral space where people can come and feel, because some countries it's like maybe a conflict or distrust with government institutions. So we do work to establish a neutral space to begin with, but it is also of course important that the government plays its role. So
okay, thanks.
Final remarks?
Yeah, I think in addition, hello, may I add something?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think the important for the government to take lead in here is also because they are the policymaker. So in this platform, we also facilitate the impact. I mean, the people that impact from their policy. Is it policy is really works or is not works? It's directly the farmers can talk with the government, so they can directly changes their policy or their program. I think that's one of the benefit from the government lead this process, because they can directly knowing what is that the policy is impactful or is not really impactful to the farmers, for instance. And then the replication, if this is a good practice, I mean, for instance, we facilitate like, oh, this is the good practice made by the private sector or the NGOs, and if the government is listen to them and learn how to make this happen in the policy and the planning program, so the replication in the government planning and the impact for the others area, it's more more of accelerate on the implementation of the good practice. I mean, that's sharing from us.
Can I add on that? Sorry.
Yes, please. So this is going to be the last comment. Because of time, I would have liked to continue a little bit, but I think we need to let people go. Booked everybody for 90 minutes, and we just like 4 minutes over time. So please, please have the last comment, Jordan.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. Then again, it depends on the government priorities, right? If you have number of priorities that we have government funding allocated for those priorities, and there, yeah, you are having a different platform or different program coming on board, then I think we really need to find some ways to really, have a buy-in on that, because you need to consider sustainability of whatever you're doing in the long run, not only for the short period of time. So you need to consider sustainability of what you're doing, because most of the government priorities and policies are funded by their own activities, right? So yeah, thanks.
Absolutely, and that issue is actually also the topic of another stream that I'm moderating, where we have had already the first workshop about platform sustainability issues. So there's definitely a link between all these different issues, and I know some of you also participate in the other stream. So anyway, I'm going to stop here. Thank you all for your suggestions and analysis here. I think this is quite a difficult topic, and there are some interesting suggestions. I'm going to ask just for a few minutes more of your time before we leave. First of all, I'd like everybody just to take 1 minute and write in the chat box the main points that you have made here in the discussion, so we record them. Just very briefly in 1 sentence or two in the chat box. So please, everybody go ahead and do that. So I'm going to just silence for 1 minute while you write in the chat box, please. I'm going to time that minute, so. So now I'm opening the chat box, and I hope I'm going to see a lot of your brilliant suggestions. Yeah, from Cinta and Pascal. Of course, we also have the recording of the event as well, but it's nice to have it really succinct and written down. Okay, so while you continue, I'd like to kind of finish off, and I have basically a question to the participants in this workshop, because it has not been completely clear to me what we needed beyond this first workshop. So many of the other streams have actually 2 workshops, and I wasn't really sure if this theme could warrant a second workshop, what that would be about, what do we really need in this topic area, do we need to produce like a guidance document or some other kind of product, or what kind of format should this turn into? And of course, a key question is: do we need a second workshop? Is there something missing? Something you would recommend that we continue with on this topic, or do you feel that this has been just an enlightening discussion and we should maybe stop it here? So I'd like to hear from you before we break off. What you think should be the next steps for this group?
I think
Please.
Thanks everybody. Good luck. Thanks for that compliment.
Yeah.
Let's just one thing before you go. Just make sure that on the 4th and the 5th October we have this launch. So just don't program anything around the time. You saying October, so yeah.
Okay, I had a hard time hearing that. Matthias, were you going to say something?
Yeah. Just to recommend you to just allow everybody to send you an email with the recommendations, as it is way too late. We are past 10 minutes already, so people need to have to do all the stuff.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So we'll just do it through email. I'm going to send you all an email thanking you for your participation, and then you can kind of respond what you think should be the next step. So let's do it like that. Thank you everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Live. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Live.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody.